and then you end up looking ridiculous. We can infer that Meghan picked this off of a rack of probably like 3 to 4, because like I said, she's not some big A-lister, she's not model-esque, so she wasn't
cringe to the max. And I must say, I just want to eat in peace.
Now, apparently Meghan Markle, her excuse for going to the show is that she's very good friends with the new head designer, Pier Paolo.
Paris doesn't gossip, it whispers. And when those whispers reach the marble halls of Hermès, they're usually about silk, not scandal. But this time, the rumor had a name, Meghan Markle. It started like a fairy tale, Meghan wanting a bag. Not just any bag, though, a custom Hermès Birkin. The kind of thing no one dares to request because even billionaires wait years to touch one. But this wasn't about money, this was about meaning. Sources close to the luxury scene say Meghan wanted something symbolic, an ethically sourced white leather Birkin, trimmed in gold hardware, engraved with a quote from one of her empowerment speeches. A statement piece, a declaration that she was stepping back into elite society, not as a duchess defined by the crown, but as a woman defining her own legacy. In her mind, it was perfect, a message in leather. Her team drafted the proposal with the precision of a royal press release. Polite, professional, and direct to Hermès headquarters in Paris. It was timed perfectly too, just months before her next Montecito charity gala. The vision was clear, Meghan walking in with the world's most iconic bag reimagined in her voice. But Paris doesn't play by Hollywood's rules. When you ask Hermès for something special, you aren't just making a request, you're challenging a century-old religion. And this time, the gods of fashion had no mercy. A few days later, the answer arrived, elegant, polished, and cutting like a knife wrapped in silk. Madame Hermès does not accept external creative direction on heritage pieces. Our legacy is defined by the Maison. Translation? We don't take design notes from duchesses. That single response, delivered with Parisian grace, changed everything, because Hermès didn't just say no, they said it in a way that every insider understood. The message wasn't private, it was deliberate. Within days, fashion editors were whispering, stylists were texting, and Meghan Markle's dream of a one-of-one bag had turned into a one-of-a-kind scandal. The woman who built an empire on image control suddenly found herself in a story she couldn't control. And for the first time in years, Meghan wasn't trending for her speeches, her charity, or her royal past. She was trending for being told no. But that was just the beginning. Because in Paris, when Hermès says no, it's not the end of the story. It's the start of your exile.
What you're about to watch, and that's why it's so cringe. And I have to say, when you're talking about someone that has now rebranded, 2020?
It began quietly, almost innocently, an email sent from Montecito to Paris, wrapped in perfect politeness and royal grammar. A duchess's team doesn't write casually. Every word is weighed, every comma considered. The message reached Hermès headquarters early on a Tuesday morning, and within hours, it became the most whispered topic in the building. The proposal was clear, a collaboration, not a demand. Meghan wanted to commission a single Birkin, made entirely from ethically sourced white leather, lined with recycled silk, finished with gold-plated hardware. On the inside flap, she requested a short engraving, her own quote about women reclaiming their voice. The goal, her team said, wasn't vanity, it was vision. The request framed Meghan as more than a celebrity. As a reformer, she wanted to bridge modern ethics with historic craftsmanship. A Birkin that symbolized purpose over privilege, empowerment over excess. The kind of project that, in her mind, would earn admiration, not controversy.
Do stuff like this. This is embarrassing. And what's even worse is the caption, Meghan Markle and Pier Paolo Cacciolo share an intimate moment. And we know how Meghan is. You and I know.
And for a brief moment, her team believed they had something brilliant. The concept tied her image to sustainability, global appeal, and elite fashion. What better way to prove she could re-enter high society on her own terms than by reinventing its crown jewel? But here's what Meghan didn't realize. Hermès doesn't reinvent anything. The Birkin is a legend, not a canvas. Its perfection lies in its permanence. To alter it is to question the house itself. It would be like asking Cartier to redesign the love bracelet or Chanel to modernize number 5. Unthinkable. Inside Hermès, executives reportedly read her email twice. They weren't offended, exactly. More fascinated. It's rare for someone to misunderstand the brand's silence so completely. Hermès doesn't do celebrity collaborations. It doesn't chase relevance. Its power comes from never changing for anyone, not even royalty. Within 48 hours, the answer was drafted by hand, translated into English, and delivered to Meghan's team. Short, elegant, irrevocable.
2,100 times? This is supposed to be another rebrand? I mean, the first one that you're gonna watch.
Madame Hermès does not accept external creative direction on heritage pieces. Our legacy is defined by the Maison. No emotion, No apology, just finality, wrapped in civility. It was the kind of refusal only Paris can deliver, beautiful and brutal at the same time. Back in Montecito, Meghan's staff reportedly read the response in disbelief. They weren't used to hearing no, not from designers, not from brands, not from anyone. One assistant allegedly suggested following up, perhaps offering the design as a charity collaboration or limited edition fundraiser. Another proposed positioning it as a gift for a women's foundation. Surely Hermès would reconsider if it sounded philanthropic, but the truth is Paris doesn't reconsider, especially not when it's Hermès. To them, that single email was the end of the conversation. They'd answered, and now the matter was closed. Permanently.
Way of saying obvious, but especially in a setting like this, where being discreet, being calm, all of that's very important.
Yet within the walls of the fashion house, the story had already begun to travel, quietly, selectively, to editors who thrive on subtext. The message wasn't just about a duchess and a handbag, it was about hierarchy. Hermès had drawn a line in the sand, a reminder that no matter how famous you are, tradition still outranks influence. By the end of the week, that polite rejection had become something else entirely. It was now a legend in its own right, a whispered parable about a duchess who tried to redesign a religion and was told, ever so elegantly, to sit back in the pews.
Perfect. That when Meghan is put into a serious spotlight, a serious position to be a serious person in fashion.
In most worlds, no ends a story. But in Paris, a no from Hermès is where the story begins. At first, everything stayed quiet. No press, no leaks, no social media buzz, just another week in fashion's most secretive house. But if you've ever worked in that world, you know how whispers move. Fast, precise, and always to the right ears first. It started with a handful of stylists and luxury buyers who had close ties to the Hermès headquarters. Then came a text here, a coffee chat there, a single sentence repeated with fascination and faint amusement. Hermès turned her down. No names needed. Everyone knew who her meant. That's how Paris works. It never says the name out loud. It lets the silence do it for you. By midweek, the story had reached Milan, then London, and by Friday, even editors in New York were murmuring the same thing over late-night wine. She asked for a custom Birkin, and they said no.
And what you're about to watch, I would have to say, is exactly who Meghan is. Exactly. Because this is so cringe.
It wasn't just gossip, it was gossip wrapped in couture. For Hermès, this was power executed to perfection. They didn't release statements. They didn't post cryptic press notes. They simply made sure the right people knew. That quiet ripple through the industry was enough to send a message stronger than any headline. Hermès never bends, not even for a duchess. And that message hit Meghan where it hurt most. In the one arena she always commanded flawlessly: perception.
For Star Wars? Because I don't like it. I don't know anybody who did like it. Maybe pajama and blankie chic?
Think about it. Meghan had spent years curating an image of control, elegance, and empowerment. She turned silence into strategy, criticism into content, and controversy into visibility. But Hermès played a different game. One older, colder, and far more powerful. They didn't fight back publicly. They just withdrew. And in the world of luxury, withdrawal is the ultimate insult. Within days, every major stylist in Paris had heard the story. Not from tabloids, but from insiders. The tale came dressed in refinement, told in soft tones over champagne at hotel bars and after parties. She wanted to collaborate, one designer whispered. They reminded her, Hermès doesn't collaborate. Soon, that same line began appearing across fashion WhatsApp groups, private circles, even Reddit threads run by luxury collectors. No one quoted an official source, because there wasn't one. That's how high-end scandal survives. It doesn't need proof, it needs tone. And this tone was unmistakable. Embarrassment disguised as elegance. By the weekend, Paris wasn't whispering anymore, it was snickering. Fashion's golden rule had been reasserted. No one, not even a duchess, tells Hermès how to make a Birkin. For Meghan, who'd spent her career turning no into opportunity, this felt different. This wasn't a public critique she could counter with a statement or a charity appearance. This was exclusion. The quiet kind, the kind that seeps into rooms before you walk in. And for a woman whose image thrived on belonging to the world's most elite circles, being quietly laughed out of one was a wound far deeper than any headline could cut. Inside fashion's inner rooms, reactions split. Some admired her confidence. Others rolled their eyes at what they saw as overreach. Hermès doesn't say yes to anyone, one Paris editor reportedly laughed. Asking for a custom Birkin is like asking the Louvre to repaint the Mona Lisa. Designers who normally keep quiet began discussing the story in hushed tones. They weren't mocking Meghan personally, they were guarding their own boundaries. Because if Hermès could turn down a duchess, every other house could too. It reinforced hierarchy, that invisible line between those who influence fashion and those who try to. By the following Monday, the whisper had turned global. Blogs picked up fragments, TikTok commentators analyzed screenshots, and suddenly the duchess's taste became open for debate. Meghan hadn't made a public move, but her perceived ambition became the week's trend. Refusing to let Paris define her, Meghan chose the loudest stage she could find, Paris Fashion Week. Front row at Balenciaga, photographers flashing, a full glam team ready to remind the industry she still belonged. Every detail was designed for control. Minimal jewelry, sleek silhouette, confident smile. It was her way of saying, you can't cancel elegance. But insiders described the atmosphere differently. The room went cold, one stylist said. People looked, but no one leaned in. In a world where acceptance is measured in eye contact and air kisses, silence can be brutal. Meghan's appearance became a test of her standing, and the silence told its own story. Still, she walked out smiling. Whatever happened behind those cameras, she didn't flinch publicly. And that composure, whether calculated or natural, kept her narrative alive. For years, Meghan's strength was message control. She curated every quote, every outfit, every appearance. But the Hermès story reminded people that in elite circles, true power isn't about control. It's about access. Once a door closes in Paris, it rarely reopens quickly. Industry chatter suggested that brands grew cautious. Designers feared that partnering with her could draw unwanted attention from traditionalists. Invitations slowed. Campaign talks paused. It wasn't cancellation. It was cooling. To some, that was Paris punishing ambition. To others, it was simply the city protecting its own myth. Authenticity over agenda. Artistry over activism. Meghan's team reportedly shifted focus back to California, where the narrative was kinder and the spotlight easier to steer. What made this story explode wasn't just fashion, it was meaning. The Birkin represents exclusivity, patience, craftsmanship. Meghan's request represented accessibility, personalization, progress. In trying to merge those worlds, she'd unintentionally sparked a cultural debate. Can legacy brands evolve without losing their soul? Commentators pointed out that Hermès has refused countless celebrity collaborations. They turned down rappers, actors, even royalty. But because Meghan's request was tied to empowerment messaging, it clashed with a brand that rarely mixes business with social statements. That contrast, modern activism versus timeless luxury, became the real story. Fashion journalists wrote think pieces, fans argued online, and suddenly a bag became a mirror for how society views women who demand space in traditions built by men. Despite the whispers, there was never an official statement from Hermès, no press release naming her. The humiliation was entirely social, carried by tone, not text. And that's what stung most. Meghan has faced global headlines before, but this was different. It was quiet, no outrage to fight, no comment to correct, just exclusion. Still, people close to her insist she saw it coming. She knew asking for creative control from Hermès was bold, but boldness built her career. For every door that shuts, she tends to find another way in. And this time, insiders say, she decided that Paris wouldn't be her battlefield. California would. Back in Montecito, new plans were already forming. Sources in entertainment PR circles claim Meghan began exploring ways to channel the controversy into a business pivot, something that fuses ethics, fashion, and storytelling. Not a handbag line, but a statement brand centered on sustainable luxury and women's voices. To supporters, it's the perfect next act. Take the rejection and turn it into a revolution. To critics, it's another reinvention from someone who refuses to fade out. Either way, the Hermès saga gave her something priceless: relevance. In a news cycle obsessed with what's next, Meghan's no became the seed of her next headline. Paris moves on quickly, but it never forgets. What began as a polite refusal turned into a global conversation about power, privilege, and perception. Hermès proved that even in an age of influencers, tradition still calls the shots. Meghan reminded the world that she doesn't vanish when shut out. She adapts. Today, as she quietly builds her next venture in California, fashion insiders admit they're still watching. Because in this industry, redemption is the rarest luxury of all, and Meghan Markle has made a career out of turning rejection into a comeback. Love her or hate her, she remains what Paris can never ignore, a story that keeps returning.